he and his wife, to have that staked out. And we'll have to warn it at the meeting. So honestly, people are encouraged to want to see what's going on down there. So it would be a support.
The relationship is very good now. We're working together, and we've had some great dialogue. So
Apparently,
very good.
Okay, Dawson. Number 7, wrap up of road project. Gene Carson is here, our clerk of the works. And we've been working with Gene on this whole project. He has been the expert who's been watching over the project. And we're very close to the end. And go ahead, Gene.
Basically, water's construction at this point in time has completed all resurfacing that's been requested of them. We have one final pay estimate to process. There is some minor backfilling of paved edges that will be completed by the end of this week. And at that point in time, I believe the project will be completed. The pay request is for the work that was done this month and part of last month. I'm in the process of reviewing the project records, which I will turn over to the town upon completion. Through Waters to review pay requests to make sure there's no errors or omissions in any of the payments. The town does have a 5% retainage on the contract, for which Waters legally will be requesting some release retainage because some of this project was completed a year ago. So he would like to start receiving some of that retainage. I did prepare for the selectmen a copy of a road listing showing exactly what was done on each roadway, by mileage and type of construction that was performed. It's just an informational sheet. And I was also requested at the beginning of this project that once the road, this project was completed, to just write a brief summary of the project and put together some recommendation based on my experience and knowledge of highway maintenance of what should be done with these roads in conjunction with the remainder of the roads. You've basically, under this project, have completed resurfacing about 58% of your roadways. Of that remaining percentage, not all those roads are in bad condition. Some still are in bad condition, will have to be addressed. But realizing the budgetary restraints and what have you, that's going to be up to the town to address from that point. But carry forward with the request that was made of me to prepare that report for you. It should be available prior to next month's meeting. I will not need to be here, I don't believe, unless you want me to. It'll be a written report. I'll just submit this board of selectmen.
Thank you. Gene, any questions for Gene? No.
It's hard to be an expert on all the roads in the town of Sharon, since they're 60 miles away, and blacktop. The ones that I happen to most frequently drive on are Caucasown, West Cornwall, and Whitehall. And my observations, concerns I've had, one is fairly simple. I would say I'm hoping the money is there, perhaps in the town budget, but there's no line on those roads. And in my opinion, it makes it a little dangerous to drive them at night, because they're all, especially Caucasown and West Cornwall, pretty narrow. So I found it a little bit scary. So there used to be a line item for line cleaning. We may not be able to do it this fall, but we'll have to do it in the spring.
I'll address that. At a meeting of our Northwest COG, I brought that up, and none of the other towns do that because of the liability. And Doug Humes, who is a DOT representative, said there is definite liability in putting lines on town roads because they don't meet the qualifications of state roads that do have lines. And once you put those lines on, the town becomes liable for accidents and that sort of thing. And it's his...
It's an interesting opinion, and I respect his opinion. I just don't have to share it.
Yeah.
But the other concern I've had driving these roads is it seems to me, especially as you're driving down Caucus out of West Cornwall, that there's vegetation growing in from the edges. And it kind of looks as if some of that vegetation is undermining the edges that are now new edges. So my question is, should I be concerned about that? What's going on here?
Well, we're hoping that there is some vegetation there with a root system to hold it. That's one of the things the state now has requested. Can you speak to that?
What you're seeing is the backfilling of the pavement edges was done with a combination of material that the town was able to provide to the contractor. Some of it was the asphalt millings where we milled some of those like Caucus-town, which is ground up dry asphalt. That was put on the edge of the road approximately 1 foot in from the pavement edge. The weeds and what have you are growing up through that like they will any type of dirt and gravel or what have you. It's not going through the asphalt. So.
And I think it helps hold it in place now.
So they will presumably mold
Right. Howard?
Howard Fuhr. I have two questions. Is the Westwoods culvert road that needs to be repaved as a result of the work that's being completed going to be part of this project? Paving?
We're going to address that in the next couple of days. We're meeting with the contract engineers, as they said, on the Mitchelltown Road, and we're also meeting with them on the Westwoods through culvert on Friday to go over with the or Thursday to go over with the contractor just what we are finishing on that. Yeah.
So
We
it's
hope,
part of the project, or is it?
we're hoping it's going to be part of the project.
Oh, okay. And also, I was wondering if you could summarize for us where we stand financially in terms of the money that we allocated for the project and where we finally wound up.
Well, the last time we balanced up, we had about $30,000, about $57,000, and now we've done some additional work backing up in some acres. So Waters will give us an additional bill on that. So we're going to end up with a few $1,000s in surplus on that. Right now, they came back on Monday and did some more catch basins and driveways and that sort of thing. And then tomorrow they're going to be here doing some backup on King Hill Road and that sort of thing, and Munchtown Road, and then we'll have a better idea what we're going to end up on the project. Any other questions for Jean?
I have a question. Ann Saunders again. When you say that 100% or we're finished with the project, does that also mean that close to 100% of the roads that needed to be repaired in some way or repaved are all now completely done?
No.
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 We did with the money available, we did 32 plus miles of roadway.
So what would you say is the percent that did get done that needed to be done, roughly?
I have not personally reviewed all the other roads that were on the original list. I don't know what condition they are. A lot of those I haven't written, so not being a resident, I don't know what the condition of those are. For instance, the one where I can tell you is like Mudge Pond Road, not on the list. It appears to be wrong in good condition. So that's part of it.
Okay, so not every road needed to be done.
Right.
I'm just talking about the ones that needed to be done.
I believe Harry lives on a road that he wished it got done, but it didn't. It was hoped it would, we'd get there, but we didn't. So Bob's trying to address that. His own budget.
Any others? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jean has done a great job for us. Okay. Number 8 is the King Hill Road Drainage Project. John, you asked for that to be put on the agenda?
I believe Mr. Maskey has a presentation for us.
Yeah, I'd like to make some comments.
I wish that I'd known you were going to be here, because then we would have had our town attorney here.
Well, I'm making comments of the facts,
Okay,
not
that's fine.
necessarily legal
And
conclusions.
then we'll respond to those.
I think if you don't mind, we'll move up to the table where we can spread out the the documents here. I want to clarify a couple of points. Neither I nor my client were in attendance at the September 13th Board of Selectmen meeting. Now, at that meeting, there were numerous questions that went unanswered. There were many allegations made primarily by the first selectman against my client that we believe were untrue and, frankly, slanderous. It was clear from the comments made at the meeting that the other selectmen may not have been aware of the nature of the work performed by my client, nor his charges for the same. If the allegations and statements that were made were due to a misunderstanding of the scope of work performed by my client for the town and my client's billings to the town, then this meeting tonight may be able to resolve those issues and lead to the payment to my client by the town for the work that he performed. In addition, I believe my client is entitled to a retraction by the Board of Selectmen of the allegations that were made by the first selectman against my client, as we believe they were untrue and without foundation, and assuming that they arose as a result of a misunderstanding of the scope of the work performed by my client and my client's abilities. On the other hand, if the allegations made by the first selectman against my client are made for reasons other than his misunderstanding of the scope of the work performed by my client for the town, then no presentation at this meeting will resolve those untruthful allegations and slanderous statements, and this matter will likely be continued in another more formal forum. And I want to address some things here regarding the timeline. Some of this may be redundant, but I'm sure there's people in the audience who are not aware of what went on here, and I think we need to clarify that. The drainage problems with King Hill Road existed long before Essent purchased the hospital in 2007. The drainage problems as to Miss Kilby's property arose shortly after she granted the easement to the town in 1980. In 1999, the town actually paid monies to Miss Kilby as compensation, partial compensation for part of the problem. I went over in preparation of this meeting, and as a result of the comments made at the September 13th Selectmen's meeting, I reviewed the Board of Selectmen's minutes that are available on the town website. If you review them, you'll find that the King Hill drainage system and the work in connection with that was a topic of virtually every selectmen's meeting from January 2009 to the present time. There's a couple of exceptions, but the report that was prepared for the drainage system by Leonard Engineering, the need for that report began during Dr. Brown's administration. I believe the minutes, the November 10th, 2009 minutes reflect that. At that meeting, the Board of Selectmen voted to pay Leonard Engineering $9,800 to prepare a model of the King Hill drainage system. At the December 15th, 2009 Board of Selectmen meeting, Leonard Engineering report was discussed as it was anticipated that it would be received the next day. The minutes reflect that once that was received, the Board of Selectmen could determine how they were going to fund the solution. I have a copy of that report, and it's the preliminary pipe size determination, the King Hill Road storm sewer prepared for the town of Sharon, and dated December 16th, 2009. I'm assuming the selectmen have copies? Yep.
I don't have a copy,
Okay. Review the copy.
but I don't own a copy, but I did review a copy of it
Okay.
recently, actually.
Okay, have you got it?
I saw one at one point, you know.
Okay, the copy we have, we obtained from the town, so there's a copy there. At the, one of the issues at the January 2010 Board of Selectmen meeting, there were a discussion of the suggested options for the work to resolve the issue. The minutes of the Board of Selectmen's meeting reflect the fact that once a particular option was going to be selected, it would come back to the board for a recommendation as to how to proceed, and then on to the Board of Finance and the town meeting for funding. I don't believe that ever happened. It was also mentioned in the minutes
that the first selectman had shared a portion of the report with the then chairman of the hospital, Charles Theron, and was going to try to work out an agreement with the hospital. Prior minutes of the Board of Selectmen reflect the fact that it was generally the hospital's feeling that they were not responsible to pay for the repair of the problem. And again, the problem existed before Essent acquired title to the hospital. At the April 13th, 2010 Board of Selectmen meeting, at the February 9th, 2010 Board of Selectmen meeting, Bob Blouse reported to the board that the hospital had agreed to be a partner in the drainage project. And the hospital was going to contribute some money. At that same meeting, the minutes go on to state that the town road crew, it was anticipated that the town road crew would do some or all of the work. And again, that's the February 9th, 2010 Board of Selectmen. At the April 13th, 2010 Board of Selectmen meeting, Selectman Blouse reported to the board that he expected to hear that week as to the hospital's plans for assistance. Once the board heard from the hospital, then they would have a special meeting to determine which of the 8 options outlined in the Leonard engineering report would be selected, and that the selectmen would then also hold a meeting with the neighbors to explain to them what was going on. The meeting with the neighbors was held on May 1st, 2010, and there's minutes to that effect posted on the website. Now, this becomes very important. At the May 11th, 2010 Board of Selectmen meeting, Bob Wax cast out the cost estimate. I've never seen that. I'm assuming there's copies here. The minutes indicate that option 1 was discussed. That's actually a typographical error. Option 1 in the report was the existing conditions. It was option 6 that was discussed. According to the selectmen, the hospital had agreed to pay for the cost of the trenching. That's all the hospital agreed to, the cost of the trenching. Now, the minutes reflect that it's $39,000. It was actually closer to $40,000 and ultimately rounded off to $40,000. As of May 11th, 2010, the actual estimate, or the cost of the trenching, the hospital's contribution for the trenching, had been established, as stated in the minutes. The hospital is not going to contribute any additional funding. And at that same meeting, and this is the bone of contention, I think, with the comments made at the September meeting. At that same meeting, the Board of Selectmen agreed to pay Leonard Engineering an additional $7,000 to design the inlet and the outlet in the culvert design. As the design didn't exist at that point in time.
And what was that date?
That's on your May 11th, 2010 minutes. The design of the inlet and outlet didn't exist at the time. That's when you hired Leonard at that meeting, or agreed to fund hiring Leonard to design the inlet and the outlet. But the contribution of the hospital had already been established at that point. Now, there were subsequently, and as a result of that, there were claims that Palmer Construction was billing twice for the same work. And that's very much not the case. The Palmer construction contract with the hospital, while it was entered into after the plans for the were received for the inlet and the outlet in June of 2010, that contract did not, with the hospital, was explicit in its terms, and it was only for the trenching. And that matches, while that contract was signed in June, that matches the statements made in May of 2010, more than a month prior to the design of the inlet and outlet being submitted to the town. Now, the contractor could not have bid on constructing an inlet and an outlet, the design for which was not known. The hospital contract is explicit description of work. Trench for 36-inch storm drain as drawn. Install bedding material for pipe and 36-inch piping. Backfilling by others. Excavate for and set one concrete manhole. Backfilling by others. Cost for this phase of work, $40,000. Any additional work will be billed to the town of Sharon. Now this is a contract between the hospital and Palmer Construction. While clearly the town is not responsible for work as per the terms of the fact that the contract with the hospital states that, the town's not responsible, nor is the contract enforceable by the town. This was an agreement between Palmer Construction and the Sharon Hospital. Each side was well aware of what was included in the work. The contract that was written on June 8th, I believe at that point in time, the final plans for the inlet and outlet might have been submitted to the town, but the plan referred to in the hospital contract is the December 16th plan. It only reflects one manhole. The option 6, as it was bid and subsequently worked on, there were other manholes listed, but they were deleted from the plan. It's just one manhole on the east side of King Hill Road. The additional manholes didn't appear until the final plan in June, and they were on the west side of the road. And that west side of the road isn't even shown on the June 16th, or the December 16th proposal. You had a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Where in the proposal to, from Palmer to the hospital does it refer to December 16th?
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Okay,
It doesn't. Nor does it have to. Each side knew what it was. But again, it's the trenching. It does not say it's not. They do not say they're going to do all the work. Just as you in the electrical contracting business were given a set of house plans. Well, you bid the plans for the electrical work. That didn't mean that you were going to do the windows, the siding, and everything because it was shown on the plans. They referenced the Leonard engineering plan. That's the 1216 plan. But more importantly, and even if you say, okay, well, maybe it was the June, the specific date is not mentioned. It just references